Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? I want to talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of the activities in the magic system. Like I'm talking about writing scrolls, writing spell books, transcribing spells from book to book, or researching a new spell. How do you get a new spell? All that kind of stuff. In Lamentations of the Flame Princess, it's specifically this is kind of a video for my players. Although I think it kind of applies in general because I'm so smart. But kind of the flavor of like how this actually happens. It's certainly in my game, and how you can do it in your Lamentations of the Flame Princess game, whatever. I'm using these rules. So part of the shtick of this particular supplement, outside of all the other stuff, is that all the spells are treated kind of like as first level. Like doesn't really matter what the spell is. However, for purposes of cost, they're treated as third level, which is kind of egalitarian. You can kind of mess with that in your game depending on what kind of money system, how much time you want things to take, all that kind of junk. I also want to cover a couple of other concepts found in this great game here. But let's get right on to the meat and potatoes of all this. So you want to do things in this game, like you want to write a scroll yourself, because it doesn't matter what level you are, anybody can write a scroll. You want to transcribe a spell from a scroll that you found into your spell book. You say, I found this nifty scroll. I'm not going to cast the spell off it and have it disappear. I want that spell forever and ever. That's the smart thing to do. You just transcribe your spell book. Say you want to transcribe a spell from another spell book into your spell book. Say you've stolen a spell book from somebody. Or say you decided to develop a friendly relationship, or maybe a strained relationship with another magic user, which happened in the game the other night. How do you do that? Then it's a matter of like researching a spell. Because, in this game, like, you gain a level, you get a new spell or whatever, you don't automatically get this new spell out of thin air. Where did it come from? You researched it. And so there's rules for, like, researching a spell that's on the spell lists, or if you have this idea in your head, which hopefully you do, because I think these games really reward creativity, and you talk to the game master, you kind of negotiate out of game what the spell would actually look like. Okay, actually going back and researching the spell, how much does that cost? And then there's things about creating a potion, creating a wand, a staff, all that sort of thing. Everything costs money and time. So it's literally a die roll depending on how, let's go down. I'm not going to give you all the figures here. Writing a scroll, you might roll 2d6. Transcribing a spell from a scroll to a spell book might be 1d6. Book to book is 1d3. Researching a spell on the spell list, you roll 3d6 for the number of days is what you're rolling for. That's going to take you. Researching a new spell that you've created yourself, maybe that's going to be 46 days. Now that's per spell level. So multiply all those numbers by 3 if you're going to go strictly by this. I'm not sure how practical it's going to be. Like I did that the other night, and so literally, they rolled 3 each time. So they're rolling from writing from book to book. So it took 9 days for the PC to write a spell from the bad guy's book into his, and the other 9 days. So for 18 days, they sat on this guy's pirate ship and did that. So that was a little, anyhow. It's something that you can adjust to fit your specific game, but the codified, how to do this is in there. And then the other factor is it costs money. So for each one of these things, it costs X number of silver pieces a day. Some things are really costly, like writing a scroll costs 50 silver pieces a day. Creating a potion or creating a wand or staff, 50 a day. What does all that really mean? Like, what are you spending those 50 silver pieces on? That's up to you. You can narrate the hilt out of that you're going out to get special ingredients, you're collecting these things, you're spending your flunkies out to get them, or you can kind of gloss over it. It's up to you how to narrate that. Same thing, it costs them 10 silver pieces a day to transcribe from book to book. I kind of narrating that as being kind of like expensive ink and all this other kind of junk. But once again, it's up to you. Like, how much do you want to role play that? It's entirely up to you. Like, where do you want to spend your time, or what does you and your group find interesting to spend narrative time on in the game? And there's not a right or wrong way to do that. It's just what floats the boat of that particular group. But part of what's happening in these two games I'm running, especially the one where there's just 2 magic users, is they're encountering magical texts, and so that's a lot of great stuff for in-game flavor. But what the hell do those texts mean? Maybe some of those texts they're actually encountering will have some occult information or some clues about stuff that's happening in the world. Other of these books will just kind of be like, well, this magic text. If you go into it, maybe there really won't be anything really special that happens. Maybe there will. I don't want to, no spoilers. But maybe it's just going to be some kind of esoteric book. Why the hell do you need these esoteric books? In this game, you need a library and a laboratory as a magic user. You can do things without a library or laboratory, but if you don't have a laboratory, in this case, it's worth, you have to have it. It's got to be worth 1,000 silver pieces per level of the spell. So technically, if you're following these rules, you need a library of 3,000 silver piece worth. If you don't have a library of that size, then the times and thus the costs of all these magical activities are doubled. That's not a good deal. So part of the gig of being a wizard is you want to build up your library. You want to build up your laboratory as well, because you're going to need a laboratory to actually do things like create potions and all that kind of stuff, and wands. And there are certain spells in here where you're making something like a clone, I think is one of the spells. There are things where it actually requires a laboratory, and you have to roll dice to see how much of your value of your laboratory you've actually depreciated and everything. So that's a long-winded way of saying part of the whole reason for collecting all these magical tomes, why your character would want all these things, is you're trying to beef up your library. You may be able to because when you're actually researching a spell, like researching a spell on the spell list is cost it's 3d6 days. Researching a new spell, which you've just made up yourself, that's 46 days, and then there's a silver piece cost there. But what are you actually doing when you're researching this new spell? You've got this library full of all these esoteric books, and you're kind of piecing together. This is the fluff part. This is my fluff part. You're piecing together a little bit here and a little bit there, and you're kind of understanding the way you can open magical gates or twist the fabric of reality or do whatever, and you finally realize, this is how I can actually make a fireball happen. These are the incantations that will, summon blah, blah, blah. Once again, fluff it the way you want to. So that's what's happening when somebody's actually researching a spell. So they need these books, they need this magical stuff in order to be able to do that effectively. That kind of dovetails really great into the other part I want to talk about, and that's right here in this great third printing of Swords and Wizardry, beautifully illustrated by various women artists, and done by Contessa here. We talk about alternate approach to higher level magic. In this particular book, the spells only go up to about 6th level, but it really doesn't matter like which game you're using, whether you're using Lamentations or Swords and Wizardry. The idea that there's all kinds of stuff in the world. You read fiction, whatever, and the stock answer is, well, how did that happen? Well, a wizard did it. But you look at the spell list. I remember doing this as a kid. You look at the spell list and there's no spells in there that say you make this thing. How in the world did the wizard do this? And so part of the the deal is you can kind of fluff out the game, and this is kind of what I'm doing with my game. This is what I'm getting at, is that if you want to make something particularly cool, you want to create some kind of device or enchant this particular area or do whatever. Well, this might be a complex ritual. This might be something where it's going to cost you a lot of research, a lot of time to figure out how to do it, and so it might not necessarily be a spell as such, but more of like a magic ritual, and that may end up costing you an awful lot of money. That may end up costing you supplies. You may have to go get particular things. You may have to do it at a certain time of night. Whatever. You can beef it up as much as you want to, and it's something that the magic user can maybe spend a certain amount of days doing, and then they might be able to create this particular effect. So you can have a lot of fun with that, as opposed to making something a spell that the character has to research. Because let's be honest, how many times do you need to create an enchanted area? With all kinds of wards to protect your tower from, intrusion. And that mirror that, like, when somebody looks in it, they can't see themselves unless they're a certain alignment, or that maybe sucks their soul out to an alternate dimension. Probably once. So, it's more of a ritual. So, hopefully that kind of, like, at least that gives a window for my players to look into, like, what is all this? What's actually going on with us? Why are we doing that? Are we just doing it for fluff? Well, yeah, but it informs the flavor. And to me, that makes the game a lot more fun. So hopefully that explains that for my players, and hopefully, for you, it kind of gives you some ideas as you're playing these games. Don't get so bogged down in like, well, it's not in the rules, so we can't do it. Well, seriously, these particular games, they're a lot of flexible. There's this great codified system here in this one, which I really, really appreciate because it's very simple, but you can kind of mess with it and tweak it to suit you. So how about that?